much for the generous introduction, Vivian. I'm really glad to be here to share my work, although I'm also a little bit nervous. This is the first time I touched upon the topic of marital infidelity. I would like to thank my collaborator, Wei Xiangluo from Fudan University. He is one of the PIs on the Chinese private life survey, the data that we're using in this particular study. So there are many ways social scientists can study marital infertility, but for us, family demographers and sociologists, what we really care about is how gender dynamics in the household and the larger social and gender stratification system could affect marital infidelity. So for that reason, I'm going to step back a little bit and review the progress in gender inequality and assortative marriages in the global context. So as a lot of you are aware, there has been massive expansion in education, particularly the increase in education opportunities for women. We have witnessed the gender wage gap has narrowed but persisted in many countries. And also there have been changes in marriage patterns, some of which I think Mary mentioned earlier, the rise of dual earner marriages, the shift away from the traditional breadwinner homemaker model. We also witnessed rise in education homogamy, hypogamy, and also there's talk about the end of hypergamy, that is husband with higher education, as a global trend. So all of these, the changes in assortative mating patterns, have brought implications for family dynamics and gender inequality in both the global south and north. There has been an abundance of work on the determinants of assortative mating, but less attention has been paid to its consequences. There has been some limited work done on how it's affecting marital stability, divorce, marital quality and satisfaction, but not much work has been done at all on marital infidelity, which is known to be one of the most commonly cited reasons for divorce. So here, just a little bit background on marital infidelity in China. Despite wide disapproval of extramarital affairs, this is not uncommon in contemporary Chinese society. It's hard to estimate, but from some existing study, it's estimated to be around 25%, as high or higher than those in developed countries such as the US, which is about 10 to 15%. This is not particularly surprising given the tradition of patriarchy and polygamy in Chinese society. In recent society, decades, there also has been a rapid increase in marital infidelity, and people cited reasons such as the modernization, exposure to Western influences, rise of individualism, the retreat of the state in private life, revival of patriarchal values, more liberal attitudes towards extramarital sex, so on and so forth as the leading reasons. But this is not the main focus of our paper, of course. What we're really trying to study here is the impact of assortative mating by education and income. So this is like preaching to the choir here, so I'll be very rapid here in summarizing the gender inequality and assortative mating in China. We know rapid education expansion has occurred since the economic reform. Women are quickly catching up, particularly in terms of enrollment in higher education. China also used to have the highest rate of labor force participation, but it started to decline. And of course, we see persistent occupational gender segregation and also pay gap. But recently, there's also been a revival of patriarchal norms, including the gender ideology of men centered around career and women, the home. In terms of assortative mating, we see educational homogamy has increased, and educational hypogamy, which is wife having higher education than wife, that's also more common than in the past. So in this study, using this newly available data from China, we investigate this association between marital infidelity and patterns of assortative mating on educational attainment and income. We asked the following question, including are those with similar characteristics are more likely to remain faithful in the marriage? Are those who bring more or less to the marriage more prone to infidelity? Are those who deviate from the gender norm are more likely to engage in infidelity as a compensatory act. So instead of focusing on the proximate determinant, such as personal values, the marital satisfaction or opportunities, we're primarily interested in how the structural forces, such as gender and social stratification, could potentially shape the gender dynamics in the marriage and consequently affect marital infidelity. So we're using these two widely used theoretical framework, who is oftentimes used to study divorce, study the household division of labor, but we're of course using it in a different light. The first theory is, I'm sure a lot of the sociologists in the room are familiar with it. This is the social exchange perspective, which presents that social behaviors are a series of exchanges by people attempting to maximize the reward, minimize cost, and those who receive rewards tend to feel obligated to reciprocate. This also brings out, of course, differentiate in power, which is a function of the dependence of one actor on another for value resources. And the other theory is the so-called gender deviance neutralization perspective. So gender roles and expectations in societies influence how individuals should act and interact with each other. So this theory posits that couples who deviate from the normative expectation of gender, in this case with men having status superior to that of women, tend to intensify traditionally gendered behaviors such as a compensatory act. And we have the following hypothesis, just quickly. We expect the homogamous marriages, the equal marriages, are more likely to be stable and the least prone to infidelity. And when marriages are unequal, those who bring more to the marriage could have more power and more likely to engage in extramarital sex. Alternatively, when marriages are unequal, the underbenefited group could try to restore equity and therefore more likely to engage in extramarital affair. Based on the second theory, the overcompensation, we would expect that hypogamy, which is when husband has a lower status, or a husband has a lower status than wife, leads to higher risk of infidelity for men and lower risk for women. And of course, we expect education and income pairings to have different impact. In addition to the independent effects, we're also looking at interactive effect, that is education and income-based assortative marriage should be jointly considered. So there's 3x3 conditions. We hypothesis that could have an impact on infidelity. So we expect the education and income homogamous marriages to have the lowest level, and when one is having the upper hand in both income and education would lead to the highest level, and then of course having the upper hand in one but not the other will balance each other out. And of course we're expecting gender asymmetry here in the conditional effect of education and income pairing. So the data that we're using is called the Chinese Private Life Survey, and this is conducted by a joint team of scholars from Peking University and Fudan University, and this is a study that's done in the summer and fall of 2020. It's done based on the snowball sampling and quota sampling. Basically, they have announced this on the social media platform, and it recruited the participants, by using online survey. And the sample altogether has over 6,000 people, but we're limiting it to those who were married at the time of survey, therefore about half of it. As you know, this is not nationally representative, but we're trying to weight it by the sex, age, education distribution of the 2020 census population, at least for the descriptive statistics. So we start with, descriptive statistics, and then we conduct binary logistic regression to estimate the effect of the education and income pairing, and then, first independently, then jointly, and then we include various covariates, ranging from age, relationship quality, to region. I'm not going to read them all just to save time. We're also doing the analysis in the full sample and then separate sample for men and women. And the dependent variable, this is based on the question on including your spouse, cohabiting partner, friend, or anybody else, how many people have you had sex with in the past 12 months? So for the currently married, we're coding sexual infidelity as 1 if they're reporting having sex with 2 or more partner, and 0 if otherwise. I think I can spend at least 10 minutes in discussing the strengths and weaknesses of this measure, but to save time, I'm just going to skip it for now and then have you take it at face value. The key to independent variable, as I said, it's about this assortative mating. As you can see here, the pattern is quite interesting and striking in that in terms of education, we have homogamy dominating about 70% of the sample. We have the husband and the wife have the same level of education. And then about 18%, this is hypergamy, that is husband has a higher education level than wife, and then 10% is when the wife having a higher education level, which is hypogamy. Income-wise, very different, right? The dominant group is actually 62% is the income hypergamy, which is men having higher income, and then followed by about 30% when they have the similar level of income, and then a small percentage in hypogamy. And so this is really suggesting that income is a pretty rigid boundary when it comes to assortative mating. Here, just very quickly, infidelity rate, descriptively, you clearly see differences by men and women. Not a big surprise. Men are more likely to commit sexual infidelity, and also you see some age pattern here, here. And there's also some rural-urban differences, but not very strong. And also, of course, it differs by men and women. So just to save time here, I'm skipping the full sample analysis because, and move directly to the subsample analysis. First of all, I want to emphasize that the result for the full sample actually is also overwhelmingly driven by the result in the men's subsample. We actually find none of these effects being significant in the women's sample. So here is the analysis based on men. As you can see, I'm starting with this model where we have the effect of relative education and income in it. So conforming to our hypothesis about homogamous marriages being the least prone to infidelity, we do see some evidence here, right? And then this coefficient here actually translates to, men in the hypogamous marriage, that is with wife with higher education, they're 10 times more likely to commit sexual infidelity. Interestingly, the income hypergamy doesn't have much of an effect or marginally significant, but we would be wrong to conclude that income doesn't matter. So when you move to the model 4, you can actually see that there are interactive effect. Just to quickly summarize the result, I want to present the result here kind of visually. There's some surprises here. Some are conforming to our expectation. So for example, the educational homogamy and income homogamy group is not the lowest in terms of the risk of infidelity. Within this group of the educational homogamy, we actually see the income hypergamy group has the lowest risk. When you move to the next group, educational hypergamy, the income hypergamy and the educational hypergamy does not have the highest risk, but it still has somewhat elevated risk compared with those who are in income homogamy. The most striking finding is in the last group, which is the educational hypogamy group, that is with the wife having the high education. So first of all, this group here with the educational hypogamy but income homogamy, the risk is about above 40%. But then when you look at this group, which is the education hypogamy coupled with income hypergamy, that it was husband with a higher level of income, the risk rises to about 70%. And we double checked this number many times because it really is striking high. And I can't help, feeling self-conscious about it because, my marriage also belongs to this particular group. And so it's very interesting. And then the last group also I want to point out that this is a group where women have the upper hand in education and income, and that this group has the lowest risk of infidelity, and it's almost like close to zero. We actually talked about this over lunch yesterday. So let me just quickly summarize this. I think I don't have very much time, so we do have some kind of hypothesis conforming to our expectation. Also, kind of relevant to the norm of a tradition of matching doors, and with women marrying up and men marrying down, there's somewhat of a balance between of those. But when there's income paired, and then it's by itself, it doesn't have a significant effect. We do see important effect when you interactively are considering this. So I think I want to end kind of on this, in that it really should come as no surprise that men and women do not have equal opportunities when it comes to marital infidelity. We find support for the social exchange and equity theory in that the homogamous marriage and education are the least prone to infidelity, but it's also conditioned by the income assortative marriages. But at the same time, we also find support for the gender deviance neutralization theory, in that when the wife surpasses the husband in education, husbands are more likely to engage in sexual infidelity. And additionally, this risk quite dramatically when the husband has a higher income than the wife. So I want to, again, I know I'm running out of time, so I want to quickly highlight in that I do think what our results are showing that the intricate relationship, such as extramarital affair, could be powerfully shaped by China's broader and social gender stratification and norms. And one of the facts, again, I want to come back to is this educational hypogamy versus the income hypergamy group, in that originally our interpretation is that this is in supportive of the overcompensation theory, right? In the man with the better resources, but in a relationship when the wife has the upper hand in education, they're overcompensating with that. But another interpretation also could be that this is a status exchange, in that men of higher income are marrying women with higher education, because ethnographic literature is showing that they're shown that these are the desirable traits, for high status men, and that this is going to ensure proper upbringing and socialization for their children. And then they look for second wives, for other status exchange. So this is it's not necessarily an overcompensation by these men, but these are the powerful men that were in control in the whole relationship. So again, we're also struck by this gender asymmetry in the findings, but I think the no findings actually also speaks volume about this persistent gender inequality, and also in terms of when better education does not necessarily translate into higher income, nor does it bring them more opportunities when it comes to extramarital affairs. So overall, the increasing in educational homogamy or hypogamy does not necessarily suggest a breakdown of the gender barrier or promote gender egalitarianism, but rather it could reinforce existing social and gender stratification in China. Sorry to be over time. Thank you so much.